This conversation was us breaking down the uncertainties and having that ability to flow in times of uncertainty. Not an easy thing to do, but we were breaking it down and had really awesome, deep conversation about what it takes to make that happen.
This was a little bit different type of show today because Angel's making some really powerful choices in her life, and change is right on her horizon. So it gets a little bit more personal than usual. We talk about some of the uncertainty that she's facing and how she's navigating the changes that are coming with her perspectives and some of the tools, and even how she might manage as she continues to move forward, because it's not an easy place where she's headed, but at the same time, she's looking forward to the adventure, right, Angel?
Well, you'll hear about it in this conversation. That's for sure. I have some good days and some really scary days, but that's all part of the journey, right? What I appreciate most about this conversation, Alicia, is you doing what you do best, and that was sharing some great tips for me to take with me as I embark into the unknown. So tune in. Any of you going through change right now? I'm sure you'll get some great advice from Alicia as well. So enjoy this show.
Yes. And there's some great little things that Angel shares about numerology and the power of it in her life. And I've also seen it in my own. So you want to see a little bit of that magic too.
Mm-hmm. All right, enjoy. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chicks Talking Shift. I'm Angel Carlton.
And I'm Alicia Rice.
How are you, my friend?
Oh, girlfriend, I gotta tell you, I'm about up to here with this shift. I am. There's been so much, everything's been in flux and change and hassle. And we've been through storms, and I've been without electricity. And you talk about having to adapt. There's
Mm.
been a lot of it lately. And then managing my energy about it, making sure that my energy's okay about it and all that. It's been a challenge, truth be told.
Everybody has been through a storm of
Yeah,
their own. You and I have been literally through storms.
literally.
Yes, the storm that came through Dallas and knocked out electricity, and that was a really humbling experience.
We got the same exact storm.
Yeah.
We got three of them within a week. We got two ice storms and then a snowstorm on top of that. Took hundreds of trees down on my property and on the main road to get out. Couldn't get out. It took them a couple of days to cut the road out and the power lines and everything. So yeah, dealing with no electricity and that stress, just when you think you're kind of squeezed down with the pandemic and shut down, then you go without electricity. It can always be worse. So it's why I really try to sit in gratitude and just find what's right about it.
I realized that you can survive on very little.
Yes.
And having to go to the car to warm up and being grateful you have a car. I did fine by candlelight, not having the television,
Mm-hmm.
very little phone use because of the battery. And it was a nice break from all the technology. It was a wonderful break from television. It was a very surreal, but we got through it.
I hear a lot of people kind of bemoan the inconveniences of no electricity. Usually I don't have that same attitude. It's an inconvenience, which always the silver lining for me is the fact that I find that being without for a while helps me realize we need very little to survive. And we're surrounded by all this stuff that we think we need every day. And so when it gets down to the bare basics of whether you have electricity, whether you can keep your food cold in the refrigerator, whether you're warm, the smallest of things start to make a difference. And what it generally does to me is causing me to be more conscious of what I do have and be more grateful for that. And it also shows me, even though I try to be grateful, the truth is the electricity's there all the time. And so it's not until it goes out and I unconsciously flick the switch and realize, oh, there's no power. How many thousands of times do I flick that switch without a thought and the lights come on? So it really brings you back to the basics. Oh, and then when everything comes back on, it's like Disneyland. It's like, woohoo!
Yes, exactly. It was a lesson in understanding what I truly have control over. I had no idea when the electricity was going to come back on. It's that unknown, that uncertainty. What I do have control over is how I'm responding to it, how I'm experiencing it, and my own thoughts and actions and behaviors. And I remember I opened the door to my apartment and we heard a waterfall outside. Open the door, and I have video of it, just water pouring down from the, actually came out of the can light that was up in the hallway. It was like an ice skating rink out there. Inconvenience, yes.
Yeah.
Because as you know, I'm about to embark on this path. It is taking the unknown and uncertainty and all that to a whole different level. So I better learn to get comfortable with it in some way, because I'm choosing it. I'm actually going out, and it's one of those things I'm choosing to experience, which has not been the case this past year. Most of us didn't, but I am about to step off the ledge and trust that my wings are ready. The heaviness, I believe, is coming from this overwhelm, this apprehension, and the fear of the unknown, because I woke up realizing, oh, wow, today's March 1st.
Yeah.
And it all has to come together this month. I'm about to detach from my belongings, whether putting it in storage or donating it or selling stuff, and about to just go take a year off. I'm going to start in Florida and focus on the journey and embrace the unknown and open myself up to opportunities and the messengers that show up, because I know they will. And I'm excited about that part. But there are some days that are just very overwhelming to think that this is what I'm doing. And I know that 2020 COVID has had an impact on a lot of people. It's definitely had an impact on me, but I have to say the last 5 years have had an impact on me more than 2020. For me, 2020 was a major turning point. We started this podcast. We started these conversations.
We posted our first video podcast on fall equinox.
Yes.
And then we posted our first podcast on winter solstice. And it was the pandemic that really squeezed it out of us.
Birthed it. Yes.
Birthed it. That's exactly right. It just came up in both of us. That was that heart calling and the calling of spirit, knowing that we've got to do it. It's time for everybody to show up. You're being rearranged. And your life is being reframed.
Yeah.
And you're leaving behind what you have known, including belongings, and packing light, not having a clue where you're headed, not knowing necessarily how you're going to get there, except for paying attention to what your heart tells you and your belly tells you and your intuition tells you, and then running that through the mind after you've gotten those gems and have a stronger sense of what resonates with you, so that the mind can compute and figure out some of the other things about it. And I got to tell you, mad props to you, sister. That is a huge deal. And if you didn't have overwhelm or fear or anxiety or doubt, then I would say you aren't human.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, this is definitely the humanness. The ego is all about your survival, and that's its job, right? Keep you
Yeah.
safe. It's survival. I love what Matt Kahn said was the ego is what anchors us into the physical.
Ah, yes.
When the ego just wants to kind of take over, it doesn't know what's going on. It's scared.
Ego's scared when it thinks it knows what's going on, let alone when you're clueless and you're feeling your way through. That's enough to kick up a whole lot of dust from the ego, and you're going to do what? That's scary stuff.
Well, and the ego has to have a problem to solve. You can look at everything that's happening as a problem. I think that's the problem. They were looking at our problems. Right? I remember doing this exercise, continue to do a lot of leadership training, one for a global telecommunications company, but it was such a growth experience for these managers. And one day I said, okay, I want you to just metaphorically, rhetorically throw your problems up here towards the front of the room. Take whatever problems you have in your life and just toss them up there. I'm like, no, just embrace in the feeling of not having them just for a moment. And you saw smiles just across the classroom. And then I said, okay, well, because this is life, we do have to address our problems. This big pile here in the middle of the room, you don't have to take your problems back. You get to choose whatever's in the pile. It was interesting because I saw this blank look on everybody's faces. The discussion was, I would choose my own problem, that they didn't want somebody else's problem. They wanted the problem that they had. It empowered them to know that they chose it. And I firmly believe, because I've studied numerology, and I believe in the blueprint of that's the soul blueprint of our lives, that we set a lot of this stuff up for ourselves in advance. These turning points, these challenges, these karmic lessons. We put ourselves in situations where we have to overcome that. And as a result, we grow and our soul evolves. A lot of the problems that we've set up for ourselves are why we're here. It's how we're looking at the problems, having awareness around it, seeing the gift, the silver lining.
Yeah.
Every problem has a silver lining, doesn't it, Alecia?
Yes, absolutely.
And this is the practice that I'm embracing personally. On a soul level, I'm choosing this so I can, in a sense, be the teacher in my 33 path. If we're talking numerology,
That's what a 33 path is.
it's a master teacher.
Mm.
Yeah, a 3 path is a teacher. And so you double the 3 energy. The 3 is a creative, artistic, all eyes are on you, very magnetic, which what makes a good teacher,
Right.
because all the pupils are looking at you to teach them. One of the choices that I set up for myself in this lifetime in particular is to take that 33 path, which keeps calling me. It has called me out of relationships. It has called me out of jobs. It keeps calling me. And I have to answer the call. I can't ignore it anymore. It's that strong. The problems are showing up so that we can see our calling as I'm entering this reinventing stage of transformation, releasing, detaching, a bunch of that going on right now. Reinventing is right around the corner, though.
But what dawns on me with the way that you explained that was, for 5 years, you've been going through release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like you say, these are the last roots of the foundation of that life that you've been in that have held you in place, but you can't fly when you're attached to roots, right? I get it. That makes sense. So, how do you get comfortable with the uncomfortable? That's a big change in life, to be making a big move from one state to another alone, and also releasing your possessions. That's a difficult thing for most people. And it's been interesting for me to watch your process, because you've said to me over and over again, I'm not attached. I could walk away without the vast majority of it, with just a suitcase, my clothing. And I sit and I watch with a house full of stuff, and I can feel your energy about it. It's clear you really mean that. And so I don't know how you do that. How do you be in that place that's willing to release so easily? Is it that you're fed up enough with how things have been, or that your calling is so strong and it's more uncomfortable not to follow the calling and stay with the stuff and grounded in what you already know? What is it that allows you to seem fairly unencumbered and without seemingly a lot of remorse about leaving it behind? I think there's a lot of people that think, how do you do that? Because we're so attached with our stuff, and how we started in talking about the storms and realizing we really need so little to survive. But yet we have these houses and these garages and storage units that are full of stuff that we can't seem to get rid of. I'm amazed at the energy that I feel from you when you say that. And I think, what does she have that I don't?
It is truly being dedicated to destiny, first and foremost. It is the calling. I believe that. There's the story I tell in the last chapter of my book, which is entitled Dedicated to Destiny. Every time I experience a transformation process, it gets me closer to that destiny. But in the last chapter of the book, I share a dream, this vivid, prolific dream where I was in a tour guided van, window van, with just a handful of other people, and it pulled around to this lookout, and you're looking over this mountain and you can see this beautiful city built into the mountains on the other side, and it was just amazing, breathtaking. And the tour guide walked up to me. I said, gosh, how do you get over there? And he said, well, we're building a bridge that takes you from one world to the other. I was like, wow, that's going to be nice when that's done. And he said, well, that's why you're here.
But I'm not dressed for it.
That's why you're here,
Yeah.
to build that bridge. It's like, wow, okay. That sounds exciting. Yeah, well, the thing about becoming a bridge builder is that you have to leave this world behind. I was like, oh wow, yeah, well, that makes total sense. Well, thanks, and then I turned around and Brian, my ex, was standing there. I said, oh my God, did you hear what that guy was just saying about building? They're going to build this beautiful bridge, takes to the other side. And they asked me if I wanted to help build it. And Brian said, that sounds like something you need to do. As someone who's seen the roller coaster of my adult life, gave me permission in that dream. It's one thing to have a dream. But then a couple days later in my yoga meditation, I heard a voice, loud. Well, do you have an answer? Like, an answer? Do I have an answer? What? The bridge. Oh, you were serious. Yes. It's like, oh, because it's just one of those dreams that stayed with you anyway. I said, well, let me think about this and process this. And a couple of weeks went by and I heard it again. Do you have an answer? And this is the time I was actually writing my book. I remember after I had finished my yoga practice and my meditation, and that was the day it was going to accept the invitation to build the bridge. That is basically meaning helping people who are having a spiritual awakening have an understanding from the third dimensional into the fifth dimensional. And so I just remember that being a very special day when I accepted this calling, and I said I wouldn't leave my son behind. That was like the only thing I just said. And the answers were, he will be building the bridge. And I can see him at some point in his life joining me. But it was this moment where I truly I dedicated myself to destiny. And then all these things in life happened and spiraled down, basically. Like all the great things in my life that were happening just started erasing themselves. The great job, relationships, opportunities. It's like, whoa, what is happening here? And so the stuff, it's the most stressful part of this, because me going into the unknown is stressful. It's not scary to me. I'm very excited about it. What overwhelms me and freaks me out is how and what do I do with all this stuff? It would be wonderful just to pack some clothes and just gotta get in my car and go. I mean, and
Right.
not have to deal with all this. I want that freedom, but I have to do this in order to get the freedom.
And what also I was feeling in my body when you were talking, because it's a familiar feeling that I have, well, I was feeling before COVID ever started. But with COVID, it really came up in me, kind of a constant pressure that I felt. I don't know if it's in the back of my head, if it's on my heart. I don't know if it's in my mind. It's hard to say, but almost like I'm supposed to be doing something that I'm not doing. And when COVID hit, all of a sudden, ding, 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 the lights went on. I'm not sure what I was waiting for. Was I waiting to turn into something? Or I don't know, was I waiting to get perfect at something before I did something? And I thought, I just need to show up with what I have. And what I have is I love to talk. I love to talk about deep subjects. I love to share little tools and perspectives and stories about things that I've experienced that worked for me. The vast majority of what I share is what I've experienced. Oh, and it doesn't mean that it works for everybody, but it's kind of sharing between ourselves, right? Well, try this. This is what worked for me. That's how we find out. And so that was the big shift that happened for me during COVID, was just do something. And then you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have the perfect idea of what it's going to be, how it's going to work. Allow yourself the process of learning out loud, and just find some courage to bring what you do have to the table without even as much thought about what are other people going to think, are they going to like it, or anything else. More than anything, it was a challenge for myself. And as soon as I did that, the spirit and the body and the mind quieted, and there was a fulfillment and a contentment that wasn't there before.
Mm.
And so that feels like my minor compared to your major that you're headed in. And there is something about loosening the tension of that discomfort by moving forward and following your heart and your sense of what you should be being and what you should be doing. Don't like the word should, that's shoulding on yourself, but what feels right. Truthfully, I'm a bit envious of where you are. When I think about myself being in that situation, I feel apprehension, I feel overwhelmed, I feel a bit anxious, but at the same time, I feel excited. It feels very adventurous to me, and very being the master of my own domain and the captain of my soul. Because I know for you, this is the first time in your life that you have been truly unencumbered.
So true.
With a grown son, you don't have any animals right now, you're not in a mortgage, you're not attached to anything right now. There aren't many times in life that show up that allow you to be able to go ahead and just jump from the nest and see if those wing feathers work. That's a big, big deal. And you know what's so fascinating to me is that I know a variety of different people that are in the same circumstances. All of a sudden, they don't have a job, they don't have a mortgage, they don't have a partner, they don't have an animal, they don't have any of these things that are major roots in our life that keep us settled and grounded where we are. It's fascinating to me that I see a pattern that I'm seeing in a lot of lives right now. And I think it's very, very tightly related to the shift, and the fact that a lot of people are being rearranged right now to get into position for that next best place for them to be, so that they can live out their destiny and what their purpose is. And I very strongly feel that for you.
That is what it feels like. What's happening is being
Yeah,
rearranged. But you
yeah,
and I have talked about it before. Damn it. You hear the
I do.
blowers?
I do. And it is what it is.
It's
We've,
not, they're not going to be there forever.
we've
But
had many blowers before. We're veterans. This ain't nothing new. We've had mowers.
right. Snow blowers.
Yes. Do not distress. We can deal with this.
What I was going to say was, we know we signed up for this. That's the thing.
Yes.
We raised our hand, we volunteered to be here. It finally makes sense.
Yeah.
I finally feel like, oh, yes, finally. Okay, let's get to it, because up to this point, it has been a lot of growing and evolving and pain and some struggling and happy in between all that, but a lot of it, that growth, those growing pains, I feel like this is what we've been preparing for. I think on a collective level, I think a lot of us are starting to feel this pull. It's almost like you can't do anything else.
So, like, one of the things that I think about is that uprooting isn't easy. It's hard enough to move across the city, let alone across the state, let alone to another state, let alone alone. Doing it with a partner, at least it's kind of like it's me and you against the world. That makes such a difference. One of the things that's been interesting to me in our combined process, we've got a lot of aspirations and a lot of goals and a lot of things that our hearts are telling us that we want to do with our podcast. Here you are trying to uproot yourself. You're trying to keep a podcast going and trying to build on that. And it's just been layer upon layer. And I've had my own layers of my storms and my lack of electricity, and even a bit of a reverberation that I saw from the storms is being locked down so tight and really living in such minimalism for 8 days, and with everything out there being frozen and you can't go anywhere. I found probably about 3 or 4 days afterwards, I kind of fell into a real funk. I could feel it coming on. And I started realizing about 5 days afterwards, I thought, I think I'm feeling some depression. And this whole COVID thing's been an emotional roller coaster anyway. I don't think I've had as many ups and downs as a lot of people because I just don't have as many moving parts in my life. Not a whole lot has changed in mine. But nevertheless, we did the recent podcast with Aaron Browning about grief and loss and death. And we talked about how the fact that it doesn't matter whether you've lost someone physically, if they've passed on, whether from COVID or anything else, but collectively, globally, we're experiencing a lot of loss and grief from the loss of the lives that we were living and the connections that we had and the fun that we had and the routines and the coping mechanisms. We've lost all that. And just all of a sudden, I realized, oh, I'm just not feeling great inside. That was a little bit challenging because I just think all the time about what we talk about, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And change isn't comfortable and growth isn't comfortable. And I just had to sit with, what am I feeling? What am I afraid of? What feels bad? Why does it feel bad? What I started doing was paying attention to different tensions that I could feel. When I started paying attention to that, I found tension in certain thoughts about how I would think about myself or other people, insecurities, doubts. I found tensions in my body when I had some of those thoughts, how they landed in my body, and even tension in my spirit on some level of having the split screen in my head about wanting to move forward, doing what we needed to do with the podcast, but yet being stopped and working with the expectations that I had that there were these things that I wanted and needed to do, but at the same time, not being there's no way that I can do them. It's like, you got to release that. It's how you started about realizing what you could control and what you couldn't control. It's like, I can't control the power. I don't know. I can't control the weather. I can't control any of it. Realizing that I had releasing to do because I had tension in my body and in my mind because I wasn't getting to what I thought I should be getting to. All of a sudden, I just started playing with tensions, realizing that they give you a lot of information if you'll sit with them and if you will ask them questions.
What kind of questions?
Like negative thinking and doubts and insecurities, feeling those. I went through a wad of those. I'm like, what is this about? I just felt like a wave came over me of not enoughs and external thoughts about what other people might be thinking. And a lot of them, I'm sure, are just projections, but even projections feel very real. Why am I feeling that way? What am I thinking? And really old stuff too, some stuff that I hadn't thought about in decades. Thinking, wow, what made that come up? What made that memory come up? Not always bad memories, just all kinds of different memories. And realizing that to a certain extent, you have to know where you're going. You have to know where you've been. I'm not someone that remembers very easily. It takes triggers for me to remember things, and for them to automatically come is really strange. I think there were just things that have been in me for a long time that I needed to remember, some of them to release, some of them to sort through and realize you don't really believe that anymore. Why are you revisiting it this now? Going
Yes.
through the residue of what's left,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's
And so,
exactly
how
right.
are we going to move across that bridge to 5D? We can't take all that baggage with us. So, it needs to be seen. It wants to know that you see it there and that you're not necessarily looking to sweep it under the rug. There's an ownership, and yes, I see you, and yes, that was uncomfortable, and that was also a story. It's our responsibility not to get rooted and stuck in those stories. It's a good thing to remind ourselves they were experiences that we had that aren't necessarily who we are. And if we acted with less than integrity, or maybe weren't so thoughtful, or maybe didn't even realize certain things, to cut ourselves some slack from that, to take ownership of it and be accountable to what was, but at the same time, not necessarily allow it to be a ball and chain around our ankle to keep us from moving forward, and being a little bit more flexible, a little bit more adaptable, and a little bit more, like you said, agile, to be able to move forward in the future without all that baggage. It's metaphorically the same as you leaving furniture and stuff behind.
Oh, absolutely.
Stories.
Every little belonging that I have has a story attached to it. It is the releasing of those stories. And that, I think that's what is part of the overwhelm that I'm feeling as well. And the releasing. This is what transformation feels like. Gotta keep reminding myself this is natural. To say embrace it seems, I mean, nearly impossible, but be in it. And you don't really have to release the story as much as what it stood for.
The attachment to it.
Attachment to it. I'm experiencing that detachment. And so I love what you had to say about the self excavation. And that's how you describe it. I love that you have that awareness. That's going to be a practice I'm taking with me on the road. Just recognize the attention, the tension. Hey, I'll take attention. I need to do that.
But you did.
I guess.
No, that's so true, Angel. When you said that and you mentioned self excavation, all of a sudden it was the same as going through my closets, cleaning out some of those little cubby holes that you don't get to very often, that the light doesn't come in, and saying, oh, I forgot you were there. Ah, yeah. I saw it's very much like packing and getting rid of things. And
Wow.
because when you move, your hands touch everything. Your eyes see everything. Ooh, if we could just get so squeaky clean inside, huh?
That is what's happening.
I've got the beautiful visual of you being on this side, and I've got the beautiful vision of the beautiful city on the other side. And I know there's this bridge. So what is the story that you're telling yourself about once you do get all of this released and the apartment's empty and all those thousands of decisions have been made and you shut that door for the last time, what story are you feeling?
The vision I have is being a messenger and having opportunities show up. I'm already seeking all these opportunities. I already have a speaking opportunity in Florida, and just the connections and the networking of conscious people while I'm down there, sharing that message, stimulating the brain, new environment, new people, being surrounded by beauty,
Yeah.
palm trees, ocean, that kind of nature. We've all been inside for too long. I feel like there's a whole world out there. The story that I'm telling myself, this is all part of it. It's an exploration. It is building that bridge. I have to trust in the process, and I have to trust that the opportunities are going to show up and create them at the same time, as we are co-creators. Starts with that vision. I envision this highest version of me. It's very clear, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm in a 7-year of a 9-year cycle that we go through.
And so what is a 7?
A 7 is a very introspective year. It's a spiritual growth year, connecting to your higher self. The veil has been lifted, born, and we have this veil that we don't remember the other side. Well, in a 7-year, that's lifted, and you have all of these knowings, insights that come through you in a 7-year that help you through the 9-year cycle. This is a perfect 7-year for me, just to go branch out, take the year off, not have a home. That's a little scary.
Yeah.
Not have my own home, I should say.
Because you're a Cancer, and that's so important to Cancers. My husband's a
Yeah.
Cancer.
Yeah.
Home is everything.
My shell. Are you kidding?
Yes.
Yeah. Great homemaker. I love being a homemaker. Housewife,
Yeah.
not so much. But I'm a homemaker.
I'm probably the opposite.
Right. The yin and the yang.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, so the way you describe a 7, that sounds perfectly in alignment with where you are.
It absolutely does. And the year 2021 being a 5-year, the energy of the 5 is adventurous, change, travel. Those two combinations combined, it's been timed pretty well. Feels like a natural thing to do. Very strange.
What you say 2021 is a 5-year. Is that a 5-year for everybody or only you?
That is the planet, the energy we're all feeling. More than likely, there's some changes happening in a lot of people's lives right now, feeling that call for adventure, feeling the changes occurring. Or if you're in the unhealthy version of the 5, you're going to be procrastinating the changes that need to be made. You will become lazier. Those are the unhealthy versions. But the healthy versions of this year is change and transformation. And I think we'll see that on all levels. In leadership, we'll just see a lot of change that humanity's experiencing.
Well, it's so interesting to me because I'm talking about 2021 being a 5 and then you heading out and the changes that you're making in your life, although they're scary and you can be a bit anxious about them and it's the unknown, uncertainty and all that. When I hear you talk about it being a 5-year and change and adventure, one of the things that dawns on me, because when change and transformation is in the mix, what do we talk about all the time? You know that most of the time discomfort comes from that. That makes me revert back to 2020 was a very, very strange year. And that 2021 has the potential of being just as uncomfortable in different ways. It's like you said earlier, it's not about what appears to be, it's about how you respond to what seems to be, especially when it's forced upon you. That's one of the things that I learned in one of our podcasts from you back towards the beginning, was the fact that totally forgot what I was going to say.
Right when you were about to compliment me.
Right when I was
Right when you're about to give me kudos.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, bottom line is change and transformation stretch and grow us. It's not a comfortable process, especially when it's not something you choose. That was the realization that I had in that podcast, was that I do love change, but most of my change is generated by me. That makes a big difference as opposed to your job's gone, your marriage is gone, someone's past, some of the more difficult things that can be foisted upon you, that is change, but highly uncomfortable because you can be blindsided, and it can put you in survival mode as well. It's like, what am I going to do now? One of the magic keys that we have is how we choose to consider what's facing us in our life, whether we've chosen it or whether it's been thrust upon us. Even when it feels bad, how to allow it.
Right. I think that's the hardest part because nobody likes to be uncomfortable. When you start to realize that you're not really happy in your life and one thing is changing not to your liking, part of me believes that your unhappiness is what's creating some of the changes to occur. Really starting to change your thinking, do that self excavation that you're talking about. What is it that makes me unhappy? Why do I feel stuck? Those asking yourself those questions and self-discover, pull out what is preventing you from being a greater version of yourself, or tap it in some more of that potential that's not being exercised. That's what it felt like for me. For too long, I wasn't growing, evolving. I don't know, stagnant. Things were happening. My dog died. Those are changes that you don't have control over. And at some point you say, you know what? I'm going to start controlling my own changes. I'm going to start controlling the outcome. It's a very empowering place to be. So when you choose differently and you are not at the effect of it, you're affecting it when you intentionally go out and create change in your own life.
Well, and just the way you think about it, you affect it. Just
Yeah.
by the way that you think about it. Moving forward, not knowing where you're going or how you're going to get there, you will be sensing your way to what the next best step for you. You're going to be feeling in your heart and your belly what feels right, whether that's responding to something that's coming your way or you creating something that you're going to step into, just choice by choice by choice, creating this new path, this bridge that you're talking about to get clear. And as long as you're responding to the messages that you're getting through your feeling place, then you're on your path. You're doing exactly what you need to do and saying a lot of yeses to invitations, which I can feel a lot of invitations coming for you.
Oh, they're showing up. Yeah. And I am saying yes. There's a lot of power in that.
Well, and at the same time, I hear you talk about the nature and stuff. I know it's so important to you. And so going to Florida and the ocean and the palm trees and the sunshine and the activity, because I know how important exercise is to you and being outdoor and really settling into a nice routine for yourself about getting outdoor, whether it's riding your bike or walking or going to the beach or starting your morning with your yoga practice. And doing that, more than anything, it's about keeping your vessel real clear so you can feel that way. Because those feelings, those are all barometers that tell you what feels right, what doesn't, which way you should go, and what decisions you should make. And
That's great
so,
advice.
well,
Excellent.
it's trusting that
Yeah.
that's the flow.
Yeah. Your intuition is clearer and your brain is clearer when your vessel is clean and you are exercising and eating well and taking time for nature, disconnecting from technology and all those things. Having a clear vessel is going to be really key this year for me. I think you're right.
Well, I think that's Angel. I mean, I really think that it's a key place of where we are just as a collective.
Yep.
Because when we get to the point like we are now, where we can't agree on basic facts and we have so much division and there's so many different stories about so many things, when the facts fail, you got to go with what you feel. And our mind thinks things, but our feelings tell us things before the facts show up often. So, I mean, that is going to be for the shift, keeping that vessel clean and being clear and tapping into what your heart and your belly are consistently, how they're guiding you. That is a mechanism that gets stronger and stronger with exercise. And so if we're going to find our way through this shift and we're going to try to figure out how to navigate our way through these maze of changes, those are the mechanisms that need to be locked into place and need to be constantly open and free flowing so that we can feel what that next best decision is, what feels right, what doesn't. They are such powerful mechanisms. A lot of us have been disconnected from them. And initially when you start, it's real confusing because you don't know what's in your head, what's true. And it's one of those things that it just gets stronger with practice. And so you'll go through that doubty phase of, is this me? I don't know. And it's trial and error. It's the same with any kind of intuition, or some people like to call it psychic. The only way often to really exercise that well, for me, I have found that it's important for me to speak it to one other person and say, let me tell you, I had this dream, or I had this feeling, or whatever, something about this. And I just need you to bear witness to this for me in case it happens. And then it's like, oh, that was right. And so each time you feel that, it becomes more familiar. And then as you're starting to really get used to it, then you have a knowing. You have that knowing. It's like, this is what's right for me. And everybody else can say that it's wrong, but you know what you know. And so it's just exercising that muscle and getting comfortable and getting familiar with what it feels like so that you can captain your soul. I'm excited for you. I know these next few weeks, because this is March 1st. So I think your lease is up April 1st. So you've got 4 weeks to deal with the stuff. Big things are on the way. And you're not the only one. There's so many people out there that I think are going through this.
Mm-hmm. We'll go through it together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, all of you out there going through some change. You're going through change. We're getting through this together. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly through the process. Okay, I need you to be with me.
It takes a village.
Yes, I'm a capable, strong person, accomplished in many ways, all those things. But that doesn't mean I still don't get scared. I have my days where I'm questioning. It's like reality seeped in, and hey, this is what it feels like. I can't ignore it. I can't brush it under the rug anymore.
All of us, we have different things that we know, and we experience different wisdom, different knowledge. But it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, what you do, who you're supposed to be in the world. The bottom line is we all go through those ebb and flows of doubt and depression and fear and anxiety. I go up and down that spiral all the time. If it weren't for the tools and the perspectives and being able to ask yourself questions to try to figure it out. And like you say, we were talking earlier about taking the fears out and the anxieties and talking to them. And the main thing is not judging them when you pull them out. The goal is to try to look at them through neutral eyes with curiosity. Okay, I'm feeling fear about moving forward into this new life that I don't have a clue what it is. Pull that fear out, separate the feeling from your body. Isn't that interesting? When you drill down and you figure out ultimately what is the base fear. We can say it's the unknown, but ultimately there's going to be a base fear, which is usually somewhere as I'm afraid I'm not going to be okay. When you get to that, then just holding that in space neutrally, isn't that interesting? I understand why that fear is there. No, that's a valid fear, but it doesn't mean that we let it stop us. So being curious of, oh, isn't that interesting that you feel that way? Instead of judging it, because the judgment is what stops the growth. Yeah, the judgment closes it down. The curiosity opens it up. I'm going to trust that I'm going to make decision after decision, and it's going to come from the right place for me, that I'm going to be okay.
Managing the fear.
Energy management.
That's it. It's self-trust, self-love. It's self-honoring, self-knowing, and be careful of not having shame around it, because somebody could be going through the same thing I'm going through, but there be shame attached to it, like, oh, I have to move out of this place into a smaller place, or whatever the case may be. It's have the awareness around how you're responding to it, because that will have an impact on how you experience it.
It's so true. And often when we feel the shame, what we can do is, if we pay real close attention, often we're thinking about other people outside of ourselves. What are they going to think? And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of that shame comes from.
There is such a freedom in that. Doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Why do we have that fear? Where do you think that comes from?
Part of it just comes from the Stone Age village, of the fact that when we lived in smaller tribes, if you were ostracized by other people, that could be a scary place because you could be alone or kicked out of the village. And so part of that is a survival mechanism that's still in that limbic brain back there of if you're not accepted, if other people judge you, if they gossip about you, if they make up stories, or even if they tell truths that aren't real pretty. And so that's where the self excavation can come in handy, especially with the shame. If you can recognize I am feeling shame and you pull it out and you say, what is that shame? What's your thought process around that shame? Often you're going to see it's something external. And so as you're pulling it out in a neutral place without judgment, you're seeing, oh, I see where I'm concerned that they're going to think this, which is usually connected with you fitting or not fitting somewhere, or being ousted, or being alone, or being disconnected, or not supportive, that sort of thing. And so that's where that neutrality comes in real handy. Of now you have the knowing of, okay, I still have the shame, but now I see some of the elements involved in that. And part of that is because I'm afraid what they're going to think. So let me step outside of what they're going to think. Now, what does that feel like? You can just get more clarity on it. And it doesn't mean it goes away like that. Oftentimes we have to work with layers and layers and layers of those things. But just being able to pull it out and peel back some of the layers of the onion, slowly but surely over time, and sometimes very quickly, you can get some clarity and dismantle the emotion, that negative feeling that goes with it, because that's what hijacks us and takes us to places that we really don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Being a kind person, a compassionate person, having the intention of being just a little bit better than you are.
Yeah.
If we all did just a little micro change like that, and we set the intention that I'm just going to try to be a little bit better. I'm
Yeah.
going to try to be a little bit more compassionate. I'm going to try to bring a little bit more of the substance and my passion and the beauty who I am and the uniqueness of who I am into the world. It doesn't have to be a big earth-shattering thing, and you don't have to be perfect.
That's
I
right.
think that's one thing our culture has really done to us with all the television and the movies and the influencers and the gurus and all of that. It's made us think that if we're not going to have some big platform and do this big thing, then it's not worth it. That is a bunch of BS.
You have to start somewhere. So I invite you to explore who you're being called to be right now. What are you being called to do? Because we didn't come down here right now for no reason at all, to suffer. I believe if you're listening to this show, you could relate to having some calling. This shift really needs you to step into that and have the courage. And I think that's what I'm doing. And I always
Yeah.
have, but I always had this little security thing over here or side thing. This is different. This is much different. And I'm sure it feels a lot different to other people, and it's freaking scary. But it doesn't have to be. It's like then I get excited. At the same moment. It's like, oh wow, okay.
No, I think that's excellent, Angel, for our listeners. Yeah. What are you feeling? What are you feeling right now? Where are you feeling it? And pulling it out with neutrality. Don't judge it. It just wants to be seen. Just acknowledge it so that you can take that as a piece of what you know about yourself. Allow it. And then if there's something about it that needs to shift, then make your decisions accordingly.
But just start doing what you're being called to do right now, as simple as it might be.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the meantime, if we can help you with anything, just reach out. You can email us at chickstalkingshift@gmail.com. And we'd be happy to help you along your journey. Thanks for being here. Thanks for accompanying us on our journey. And thank you for tuning in and the comments. And just, we really appreciate you supporting us. But more importantly, we can appreciate the fact that your soul has something here for it to receive. That makes Alecia and I feel like this is worthwhile.
We're all in this together, and we've got certain pieces and you all have other pieces, And when you communicate with us and when you comment and you share what's going on with you, it helps us understand other facets of what's going on out there in the shift that we're not having the experience of. And so the more we understand about what you're going through, the better we're able to share that with other people as well. We learn from you. So we love it when you connect with us, and because it takes a village to get through this shift, for sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd love to know if anybody else out there is being as crazy as I am.
Oh, no,
Anybody else
there's
jumping out
nobody
there?
as crazy as you.
I want to know. I just need to know if there's other people out there that can relate to what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing, what I'm doing, what I'm being, who I'm being. I'd love to hear that as well. So, whew, yeah.
I want to hear too, absolutely, because you know what? I think there's a lot more of you out there than what we often realize. We hope that you enjoyed our conversation, and we hope you'll also take a minute to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. And if you'll hit the bell, you'll be one of the first ones to get the notifications that we have a new video out before we've even posted it on social media. And so we appreciate that support. It helps us get to more people in the world, and hope you have an absolutely lovely day and work on those questions that Angel asked you, because those will help you get to some really good nuggets that'll help you understand yourself and really calm that nervous system and let you know a little bit more about how you're navigating through that world.
I have your voice in my ear. My good ear.
I hope that's not your
Asking me those questions. Like, excavation. Okay.
shovel.
Right, cheers.
Shovel that shift. It's good talking to you, girlfriend. Have a great day.
We'll see you guys on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. I so appreciate all the great tips today. I'm going to be using
Yes.
every single one of them.
Yeah.
All right.
All
And
right.
thanks for
Take
being
care.
part of the journey.
Yes.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Well, it is enough. And it is enough. Are you frozen?
You are.
Oh, you're frozen.
You're frozen. I'm not frozen. You're frozen. Yeah, I wasn't frozen. You were frozen.
You were frozen.
No, I was moving. You were frozen.
Oh, my internet connection is unstable.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You were frozen, not me.
We asked that. I don't feel like there's anything to ask.
Help us. Help us be here the way we're supposed to be.
Yes.
Put all that other stuff away.
Right.
Here, let me cleanse your aura. Get rid of all that stuff. Yes, and let's open this up, and open this up, and open this up, and open this up.
Tapping.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the difficult one right there.
Right. Got to work on that chakra.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I thought they did landscaping on Tuesdays.
That was in the other dimension.
Oh yes, that was
yes. Time sped up. Sped up in this dimension. That's so funny. I love it.
Couldn't wait another minute. Just had to get to the beach.
Yeah.
I've had enough.
Yeah, how those seagulls sounding for you?
Oh, the sound of the seagulls is awesome.
I hope they're not too noisy.
Shouldn't